Hello, and welcome to the Rossaround Backstage podcast, talking with artists, technicians, musicians, producers, directors, and all the interesting and talented people that make it all happen for you. Hi, everybody. This is Ross Pallone with the Rossaround Backstage podcast, and I'm out on the road. We are in Washington State, and I'm with Scott Taylor. We're out on tour with the Chris Isaak Band. Scott Taylor works for Sound Image, and his duties out here are to help with the audio and stage manager. And he has worked for Bush, Linkin Park, Chris Isaak, Richie Sambora, No Doubt, New Politics, Young the Giant, and Cher Lloyd. We're going to talk to Scott today about how he got into this business and where his career's heading. So, Scott, let me ask you, how'd you get into this business?
I have always been interested in music. I grew up in church, and the small church that I grew up in, my mom and my grandmother, and even my papaw before he died a long time ago, used to kind of sing in the church and all that kind of stuff. So as I grew up and everything, when I was, I guess the best starting point, that kind of gave you the history of my family a little bit there, but when I was, I want to say around 15, we'll say 15 to 16, I have always been interested in sound, but I got a call one day from one of the guys from my church, and he called my mom. I remember the call distinctively when I was home, and he asked my mom if I would be interested in running sound at the church. And so Mom asked me, and I was like, yeah, I mean, I don't know much about it, but I'll give it a shot. So I can't remember if it was like the next Sunday or whatnot, but I went and kind of shadowed him and everything. Didn't take me long. I'd had a musical background and everything. Grew up, through school doing music. Your typical music classes you're always required to take in school. So before you knew it, I was mixing. I can't even remember how many people that church was. It was a small country church, so it wasn't, terribly large amount of people, but I'd say on a typical, 150, 200. Started doing that. While I was doing that, I kind of moved myself into becoming part of what we had as like a music committee on the church. And I started playing drums there as well, to the point that I actually was mixing and playing drums at the same time. So I would go up on stage, do what I needed to, play drums and everything, and then for the people that was actually on stage, like the vocalists and everything, they would want more stuff on their monitors, so I'd go back and I would, adjust their monitors and everything. There was a couple times I actually did that because we didn't have a good sound guy at that point. That guy that taught me had moved on, so that was kind of the beginning of me just, rushing around doing kind of both angles and everything. So from there...
So that taught you that is actually impossible to do.
It's very tough to do. I'm proud to say that I did it and I pulled it off, but it's extremely hard to do. And nowadays with the technology and everything, actually you could do it with all the new technology, but not something I would want to do again.
Why did they ask you to do this? They must have had some reason to ask you.
Well, like I said, my family was a very musical family, and I was interested in music, and I would always walk back behind the console and everything at the church, and kind of get a glimpse of it and everything. And honestly, beyond that, I can't remember why. The guy that asked me, he was Randy, and I cannot remember Randy Raines was his last name. I think he's still around locally where I grew up.
And this was in Indiana.
This was in Indiana. Most people would probably know the town called Bloomington, Indiana. We weren't actually in Bloomington, but that's kind of where I'm from.
Yeah.
That's all I can remember on that part, actually, is just that he kind of knew the family and was looking for somebody that was interested, that could, was willing, that was in the church, and willing to grow up and everything in there and stay with it and everything. He was just kind of moving on, and I'm not exactly sure what he was moving on to, but he wanted to move on, so... he started asking me, and then I kind of took off and ran with it, so much to the point that I ended up, as being part of the music committee and playing the drums, I got so involved with it that I was the head of sound at that church eventually, and I was in charge of, we ordered a new console for the church, and before that, or right around that time, when that happened, when I was in high school, my sophomore year, I'm getting dates confused now. It was my cousin's senior year of high school, my freshman year of college, sorry. We owned our own audio company called Exhortation Audio. And so while I was still going to the home church, whenever I come back and everything, I was still actively going there. So with the research that I had done, for buying gear for our company, we ended up getting the same console for the church as we did for our company and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll refrain on the audio company for now. But so I was involved in buying the new console for the church and everything. And then it led into buying, new wireless, wireless mics and everything for the church. So that's where I got my first, palette of, buying consoles and buying wireless stuff and, just really stepping into it from that angle. So
right. And so you were in your first year of college when this was happening. And
yeah, roughly.
You were taken. Were you at that point? You were going to college for something else, or were you thinking, I'm going to go to college, but I want to get into audio?
I went to college originally, and I've always been very straightforward on what I wanted to do. So when I went to college, I knew I wanted to go in for business. Beyond that, I didn't know where it was going to take me, but I knew I wanted to go into business because with a business degree, you can pretty much do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And there's everything in the world operates off of business, money, finances, you name it. A business degree is not going to hinder you. So for those out there listening, if you're wondering what's going on or what the best career choice to move as far as collegiate courses, business classes will take you far. I did the business stuff, and while I was at a college called Vincennes University, and while I was doing the business courses, I was actually involved in 4 band classes. So I was in percussion ensemble where I played percussion, drums, pep band where I played drums, jazz band where I played trumpet, first chair trumpet, and concert band where I played first chair trumpet. So, growing up through high school and everything, I grew up in a musical family, so I grew up playing trumpet all the way through high school, from like 5th grade all the way through high school.
Sounds like you were taking more music classes than business classes.
At that point, yeah, well, because your first semester, when I was going to Vincennes, I only spent my first semester there. There were 4 band classes, and then I took like your basic English, math, this typical stuff that they require you to get through.
Sure.
Until I got rid of, got done with that semester, and then I ended up moving back home, which is, whatever I'm kind of jumping around here, but that's when we started the audio company, because that was my freshman year of college, and then my cousin's, who's my business partner, his senior year of high school.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and your cousin was interested in audio also, obviously. Or was he just a business guy?
He wasn't necessarily, he wasn't really interested in audio. It was I became the production manager, basically, and the audio guy. But while we were doing all this business classes and everything, it just morphed, and we took everything, like, building the contracts and all the business style stuff into our own company and everything. He went to college for communications, does a lot of website design, all that kind of stuff. So with his backing in that, he kind of became the controller, which is the guy that deals with all the money, and he did all the announcing at our venues, our shows and everything. And then anything that we needed as far as equipment or operational wise, I dealt with all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of had
So he was more the business and sales, and you were more the production guy.
Yep.
Taking care of the stuff.
Yep.
Oh, well, that makes sense. Yeah. Then what happened? Did that company become sizable?
In February of 2002, February 7th of 2002, Exhortation Audio was born. We shortened it to E-Audio. Legally, it's still Exhortation Audio, and actually, it's still in business. It's just not in operation. But we shortened it to E-Audio, and we ran for solidly doing gigs for about 8-9 years, mainly catering to weddings, school dances, proms, all that kind of stuff. We did some small live sound gigs, but the system was not built for live sound originally. It was more built for DJing and that kind of stuff. But as we built this company and everything in high school, kind of backtracking here, we did an internship program where they called it work study. So you could go and pick a job that you wanted to do in the field that you wanted. And of course, with me doing the stuff in the church like we discussed, I knew I wanted to do something a little bit with sound. And originally I wanted to become a studio engineer, which is something I know you have experience with. That being said, there was a lady that worked with my mom, because my mom and my grandmother, ironically, worked at the school as well. So they knew a lot of people in the school, and one of the ladies said that there was a local live sound company called Fraser Audio that was in Bedford, Indiana, which is, I don't even want to begin geography. I sucked in geography, so it was close. It was a close town, local. So I ended up doing a work study program with Fraser Audio during high school, during my senior year of high school. And through that, working through them through college, through the work study program through high school, because I worked there when I actually moved back from Vincennes and started taking classes at Ivy Tech State College to get the business stuff taken care of, I got a call from Fraser Audio had finally decided that, they'd made a little bit too much money, and Uncle Sam took a little bit of a toll on them, so they sold out to Indiana University. Their business manager for the union, for Indiana University Memorial Union, which is, deals with all your theatrical stuff, he calls me and says, hey, I'm looking for, extra guys, and I heard you worked with Fraser Audio and that you've had experience with, working with them and everything, so if you'd like to come and do some gigs with us and everything, I think this would be a good opportunity. It was a gig at the Sample Gates. It was like a homecoming. So I went and did that gig, and basically it was one of those deals where if you accept more gigs, the more they call you, the more you accept, the more they'll pull you in.
Yeah.
So that internship in high school ended up panning out for me, later on in the future, because I got to, do all these major theatrical tours, loading in and loading out at theaters and everything, seeing those stage managers and those audio people come in, and I would literally look at cases and look at pieces of gear and be like, okay, this is how I'm going to mimic, and, when we get the money, pull that into our audio company. So we basically sistered off of Fraser Audio for what we did.
So then, at some point, you ended up in Los Angeles. Is there a story between now and then, or is it? To
a certain degree, yeah. My parents, while we was operating e-audio, of course, by the time we had, I graduated college with my degrees, a marketing minor, a management minor, and then my business degree. And that was in 2004. I can't remember the actual month, but it was somewhere in 2004. And my parents, they travel a lot. So they love Arizona for some reason. I think it's hot, and it's one of the not really a terrible state, but I had a lot of bad things happen to me there. But they loved to vacation there and everything, and just because my mom's a big Southwest nut, they were out perusing around, and they stumbled upon this school called the Conservatory of Recording Arts and Sciences, and located in Tempe, Arizona. So they just randomly stopped by, and the staff there gave them a tour. And so they came back from that trip, and it was like, oh my gosh, Scott, you've got to check this school out and everything. So I went online, looked at it. They gave me the brochures, all this kind of stuff, and it was really cool. I mean, the classes that you took and being able to go into the studios and everything, a lot of hands-on time on this multi-million-dollar consoles that you see, huge name artists, recording on and everything, SSLs, Neves, all the big name gear. So anyway, that kind of sat stagnant for a few years, and I always said that if I wanted to go back and get some more schooling, it would either be for a full marketing degree, or it would be for an audio degree. Well, eventually it got to me where I was working at Indiana University for the union. I was working with my dad for his company in excavating, and then I was also working for my company, e-audio. 3 jobs. That's one of those deals where, you go to Christmas family get-togethers and everything, and everybody's like, oh, what are you doing now? And you go through the whole typical, well, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and it's, multiple different things. And I wanted a set career. Mm-hmm. And that set career kind of was leading me towards the music side and everything. And I have always been infatuated with tour buses. You know, you always see them driving down the road, and you're like, oh, I wonder who that is, you know, and
what are they doing in there?
What are they doing in there? Yeah, you know. So when I was younger, we went, Mom and Dad and me, I think we all went to, I think it was just the three of us, we went to this Christian concert, and the band was called Common Bond, and it was four brothers, and the dad ran sound. And the brothers' names were Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Of course.
Of the four books of the Bible. So she ended up, you know, Mom's very vocal sometimes, so she ends up going over and talking to one of them and telling him, you know, how I was so infatuated with the tour buses, and, you know, that I wanted to do something with music. And she'd always said that, like, whenever as I grow up, you need to do something with music. You're musically inclined, you love music, you need to do something with music. So she started talking to one of them, and he's like, oh, yeah, you know, come on to the bus and everything. So that was when I got my first taste of being on a tour bus and actually seeing it. And from that day forward, it was always, one day I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to live on a tour bus. I'm going to be out. I'm going to do this. And at that point, it wasn't even about the audio. It was just I wanted to live on a tour bus.
Right.
Because it was just awesome. I mean, the way they're built and everything. I mean, they're like mansions on wheels, I call them.
Your parents obviously were not opposed to you getting into the music business, so they wouldn't have brought you that brochure back and encouraged you to look into that school.
Yeah. So, of course, you know, like I said, I'm jumping around in different stories here in different times, but after they brought that back, I was just getting tired of really, you know, doing the whole 3-job deal and everything.
Yeah,
so
you wanted to finalize and say, okay, I'm going to start on doing this one thing and do it well, right?
In July of one of those years, we went to an open house that the conservatory was having and took a walk through. And at that time, whenever Mom and Dad brought the brochures back to me, there was only one campus in Tempe, Arizona. Mm-hmm. And there was like a 2-year waiting list. So even if I wanted to sign up at that point, there was a waiting list. I wasn't going to, you know, it was going to take a while to get in. So that's why I kind of just let it settle for a while. So by the time we actually ended up going and doing a walkthrough and doing an open house, they had a new campus at Gilbert. So now they were, you know, bi-campused. Went and did a walkthrough of both campuses, and it felt like somewhere that I just needed to be. Like it was that launching pad to get me into my career. So flew back and everything, you know, did some studying on it, and then finally applied, and I got into the school. And then in around 2008, end of 2008, I ended up, we kind of broke ways. Well, my two partners, the guy that worked for us and my partner in the business, they continued running the business for a little bit while I stepped away and went to school. And the whole idea was I'd go to this school, learn all I could, come back, you know, do our thing, continue on in the company. But the great thing about the school, and part of the reason I went to it, is because they require a 280-hour internship, which guarantees you getting in the door. So there was no, oh, well, you know, if you come here, you might get an internship. It was, you know, you're guaranteed to get your foot in.
Right, yeah.
So as things progressed, obviously, of course, I went and had to figure out what I was going to do with my internship. My internship ended up being with Sound Image of Southern California.
You're down in Orange County, correct?
No, they're actually in Escondido, which is in San Diego County.
All right.
But a town called Escondido, California. So I did my internship there, and in November of 2009, because I graduated the college or the school in September, in November I was hired on as a full-time employee of Sound Image and everything. So that's kind of where that led me.
Yeah. So, and Sound Image is, for those that don't know, is a highly respected professional audio company that supplies sound for all kinds of major artists throughout the United States. And probably people who have been to concerts have probably seen Sound Image guys working there with their equipment. And
yep.
Yeah, they're a big company and a good one to be involved with.
Yeah. At one point when I first started, you know, you've got your other companies out there, but at one point we were the second largest in the U.S. and fifth largest in the world, account-wise.
So tell me, Scott, so this is something that I always wonder about nowadays, because things have changed a lot since I was in that position. Do you think that you're going to school to learn audio was worth it? Or what if you would have gone and just gotten a job, just gone and begged your way into a job at Sound Image? Do you think you would have learned just as much, or do you think that actually helped you a lot, having the education?
The education helped a lot. Mm-hmm. One, like I said, this industry, it's very small, even though it seems very big. Everybody knows everybody, and if and when you get into this industry, you start seeing that more and more, and the longer you're in it. But the one thing with Sound Image is they typically don't just take random people. I mean, this place, and I'm not sure if every other company's like this, but I know Sound Image has stacks of resumes from people wanting in, and a lot of people's got a lot of qualifications. But Sound Image is a family-based, kind of, we operate kind of like as a family. So it's like you either have to know somebody within the company, or have come from either like Full Sail, which is another audio school, well, full-out production school. They do a lot of stuff, or come from the conservatory, and we take a lot of conservatory grads.
Mm-hmm. So it did help.
It did, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would not be where I'm at without going to that school right now.
And you think you learned a lot during that time at the school?
I learned a lot. I went from knowing what little bit I did when I worked with Fraser Audio, and they taught me a lot of everything, but enough to start my own company, and I was very solid. I could, technically, like even up to today, I've been, well, even before I went to school, I had been mixing front of house and doing, church bands and some of my buddies' local bands and stuff, so I felt very comfortable. But going to the school, the thing that I went there for was I knew how to mix, in air quotes. Now I needed the theory behind stuff. So the school taught me basically, like, if you put in an effects unit, like a gate or a compressor, what that's actually doing when you put that in line with your artist, with your channel, instrument, whatever. Mm-hmm. So much, in fact, that they teach you, if you go to like Japan or somewhere where the writing on the piece of gear is different and you can't read it, you can sit there, listen to it, and play around and be like, oh, okay, that's my threshold, that's my ratio, that's my attack, that's my release, all this kind of stuff. So they taught me the theory of what I was doing so I could take all that and bunch it together. Once I got through that and everything, coming into Sound Image, what kind of sucks is that you kind of have to get rid of and just kind of retrain yourself, because Sound Image will retrain you. Mm-hmm. So you can't just take off with the schooling that was there. You kind of put that in the back of your mind.
Yeah, of course. Any company, they're going to have their way of doing it, and they want it done their way. Yeah. Even though there might be several ways to accomplish the same mm-hmm. task, right? So you got into Sound Image, and then what'd they start you out doing? The real grunt work, right?
Your typical, when I was an intern, obviously, the typical stuff, wrapping cable, cleaning snakes, sweeping floors, unloading trucks, all the grunt work. And it continued until, I'm now 8 years and like 6 some odd months in, so I've, been there that long, and it took me about, just to, give you an idea, it took me about almost between 6 and 7 of those to finally get behind a desk. Even though I had experience coming into this company, this is a huge company. You're playing with professionals here, so they're, like a company like that's not just going to trust you just to hop behind, a console and stuff with their clients.
Yeah,
they don't know nothing about you, so you've got to prove yourself, and it took time, but I was patient, worked it out and everything, and just let things happen the way they were. And I pushed myself. There's a lot of young kids that's coming up, and when I went to the school, I was like 26. So jumping into even Sound Image, when I got in there, I had my 27th birthday in California, and I had to keep going because all these kids were coming in from high school and going to the conservatory and or other colleges and stuff, and then coming right out and getting into the industry, and they were just, I had to keep up with them so I wouldn't let them bypass me. But I started out doing the grunt work, everybody does, and that's the thing, is that, most people, I included, went through it. We all kind of go through it and be like, oh, well, I'm better. I know what I'm doing, and I can, get in line, because some of the people that I work with are some of the best in the industry and the best in the world. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of them out there because there's a lot of companies, but I work with some insanely smart people.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. What was like the first tour that you went out on then with Sound Image? Would they have you do?
Well, my very first tour actually was not through Sound Image. kind of going backwards again, I tutored a friend. Well, oddly enough, the manager that we have for Chris, it was her nephew. Mm-hmm. And, of course, I didn't obviously know this at that time. But anyway, I tutored him on his live sound proficiency on the club PA. When I did that, of course, we graduated school and everything. One New Year's Eve, I sent him a text because I still had his number in my phone. I sent him a text, said Happy New Year. He sends it back. He's like, "Who is this?" And I'm like, "It's Scott. It's your brother from the conservatory." He's like, "Oh man, I'm really glad you sent me a text. I lost your number. This is great." Well, when he went out with his internship, he ended up going out in Europe with a group called Igloo and Hartley, and he was over there with a group called New Politics, opening up for Igloo and Hartley. And they were wanting him to come back and do their sound for a U.S. run, the New Politics. So he called me and he's like, "Hey, I told them that I wasn't up on the live sound. That wasn't me because I'm more of a studio guy. Would you want to come out and mix front of house for this group called New Politics?" I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." So he actually ended up getting me on my first tour, and it was, a lot of people, some people don't have the luxury of starting out like this, and other people do. I started out touring in a van and a trailer. Mm-hmm. And did that for about a year and a half.
And Sound Image just put you on...
Well, at that point, so when I got hired on in November of 2009, I was there and did basic Sound Image duties. When I got hired on for this tour through for New Politics, that happened in April of 2010. Right before that, Sound Image bought a really good brand new PA for Tom Petty, because he was one of our accounts. And so, I can't really stipulate. I think it was a lot of that because we were going through the winter slum, and then we just bought that, so there was a lot of money going out. So they ended up basically temporarily laying some of us off, some of us newer people, just for a certain period of time. Well, when they did that, I got laid off literally right at the time when I was supposed to start that tour. So I went in and I talked to him, and, Rick from work, my regional director, he's completely up for people going out and doing their own freelance stuff. I mean, they all kind of are, because the more you go out and get more experience, the better you are for the company.
Yeah.
So they had already kind of said that I could go and do this. So I had already got the approval, but it just kind of worked that whenever I got laid off and needed money, I was going on this tour. So
yeah, it worked out perfect for you.
That was my first official tour. But then after I did that for about a year and a half, then I came back, and my first official tour for Sound Image, or going through Sound Image, was working with Bush. Mm-hmm. And once I got back, it was, I want to say it was between 2 and 4 weeks that I'd been there, and then got right back out doing Bush.
And what were you doing? What was your duties on Bush? What was your title and duties?
Technically, I did basically kind of everything I do here for Chris Isaak, except for that one. It was a little different because I classify myself as a low-grade systems tech, a front-of-house tech. Technically, I was a monitor tech as well and a stage tech. I was basically in charge of all of our audio gear from Sound Image. Mm-hmm. So, that was my gear to watch out for, to hook up every night. But I was mainly there for our production manager, because he was also the front of house guy. So there was a lot of times when we would load in, I would set his gear up at front of house. I would tune the PAs whenever local companies would come in. A lot of times they wouldn't be able to time align their PAs, so I would actually go through and do that kind of stuff. Then once I had everything done for him, and I would call him on the radio and be like, "Hey, front of house is ready, come on out." Luckily, it was really cool because he taught me, how he tunes PAs. So, and he let me do it while he was, doing his production stuff. So I learned really quick how to tune PAs and time align them and everything off of what he does. And I today, even still today, I use those songs to tune PAs with. So I did that, and then whenever I got done with that, then I would go up and help on stage and everything. But that took me on a lot of big tours. Worked with them for a good year and a half, and part of that tour ended up turning into going out with Nickelback and Seether and My Darkest Days. So I've been out on some major tours, and that was probably the highlight of my career tour up until Linkin Park, because that was a 24 semis and like 18, 19 bus tour, so. It was
And what was your duties on that? Same thing?
It was the same thing. I was, was working still with Bush and everything, but it was cool because Nickelback and some of those are some of my, idols, so it was really cool to bridge into that, so.
So it sounds like Bush wasn't carrying PA, so it was kind of like what we do here. We bring everything except for PA.
Yeah, they were.
But Linkin Park was carrying their own PA, I would imagine.
Linkin Park was carrying their PA, and I was one of the PA guys, and that was my first tour that I was actually assigned to flying the PA, but being that was my first official tour at flying, I was the fourth guy on the crew, so we had a stage left guy, PA guy, we had a stage right PA guy, and a systems tech out at front that was dealing with the front of house guys. So I basically, in an amount of being with Linkin Park for about 6 months, not consistently, but total, I basically learned how to fly PA, and they all kind of go up the same way once you learn. But that was my big PA training tour.
Yeah, but it's a lot of responsibility.
It's a lot of responsibility, and
not only does it have to sound right, but it's got to be safe.
Yes, it's a very huge liability with that.
Yeah, people don't realize there's thousands of pounds of stuff hanging up in the air between the lights and the sound and everything.
Yes.
All right, and then so it looks you also worked with Richie Sambora, same kind of thing.
I was doing Richie. I didn't actually get to tour with him, but I did his rehearsals with him because we were getting ready to go on a tour, and ended up getting, long story short, ended up getting canceled.
Oh,
I did rehearsals for him because he was a sound image client as well. So I was a monitor tech and stage tech on that one.
What about No Doubt?
No Doubt, I filled in for our monitor engineer and was mixing monitors and rehearsals for them because he was also the production manager of another band. So he works, doing different gigs and everything. So I filled in for him when he had to go do some stuff and just mixed monitors for Gwen and the guys.
So after New Politics, which was your actual first real mixing gig with a...
I didn't mix. Or New Politics, you mean?
Yeah. Yeah, you were mixing front of house for them.
Mm-hmm.
So then was No Doubt the first time that you mixed with a major act after that?
Trying to do the lineage here. I think so, yes.
Right.
Yes, it was.
Sounds like, yeah. And so now you have experience mixing front of house and monitors with major acts. What do you like to do better?
I like front of house. I mean, as a musician, I know how things are supposed to sound. I play guitars. I play drums. I can sing. I don't really play bass, but I know how a bass is supposed to sound. I mean, I have that musician quality, which they always say musicians make the best front of house engineers. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I grew up doing them in church. Mixing. My actual drum instructor played with Travis Tritt, Sawyer Brown, Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, Randy Travis. So growing up, working and being taught by a professional musician, learning the theory of drums, I knew how he made the drums sing and how he tuned them and everything. So it kind of honed my ear into being a musician engineer, so to speak, because I could really hone my ears towards the musician side and speak the musician language as I was mixing. Mm-hmm. So that really helped. I don't mind doing monitors. Monitors is a very huge mental game.
Yeah.
When I was mixing. We went to the Orange County Fair, and that's where I kind of learned how to mix monitors. I think it was actually before I went with No Doubt. And right after that was whenever I did No Doubt, and then I went and did a fill-in gig mixing monitors for Cher Lloyd. And then right after that, I jumped into mixing monitors for Big Bad Voodoo Daddy. So, which that was my gig. I didn't fill in. That was actually my gig. So I went from, learning how to do it to mixing basically 4 mixes, in-ear mixes, and then went to Big Bad, which was 9 in-ear mixes and a wedge mix. So the lineage kind of kept growing, but through all that, great bands to work with, and I had no problems with it. But yeah, I'm definitely a front of house guy versus.
Mm-hmm. But there's just there is a lot more work out there for monitor engineers than there is front of house guys.
There is.
I mean, I could give jobs to monitor engineers year round. Somebody's always looking for a monitor engineer.
It's the hot seat.
Yeah. They get fired a lot, and they
I've heard stories.
Or they burn out, or something. Something happens, or somebody's not happy with them. But it's a very hard job.
I hear stories of our touring director actually spent about 10 years with Aerosmith, and he's had shoes thrown at him and beer bottles. I mean, you name it. So it's like people don't typically want the monitor seat. There are some out there that love it.
Oh yeah.
It's just one of those gut check moments because people.
You have to have a certain kind of personality. You have to be able to take a little bit of criticism and abuse and everything. Front of house, you can get that too. If you can get belligerent audience members that think that it should sound different. So, but for the most part, I think that definitely the monitoring engineering position is much more difficult. I'm not saying it's more difficult technically. It is. It is more difficult technically because you got a lot more stuff to deal with. But you got to satisfy all those guys on stage.
Which typically sounds easy because if you got a good band to work with, like Big Bad and even Cher Lloyd, the ones that I've mixed for, as long as they have great personalities, they'll tell you what they want. That's why people say, "Oh, monitors is easy," because they tell you what they want. Just give it to them. So if you know how to manipulate that sound, and you can give it to them, and you're solid. You got a great gig.
Yeah.
But the thing that a lot of people don't realize, and I know you mix front of house for Chris Isaak and everything, which every once in a while our manager may be out there, but a lot of, like, whenever I was starting out with New Politics and all these younger bands, I'm back there with record label executives and managers and the manager of the band, and they're critiquing my sound because they want to know how the band is sounding. So I got used to dealing with high executives in the record industry up front, standing out there. So that, to me, a lot of people say that's a lot harder, and it kind of is. But at the same time, some of those people don't know what it's supposed to sound like, so you can actually woo them, or you can...
Yeah, or they might understand, why does it sound like this today?
Right.
Where yesterday it sounded so much better. Well, it's a different room, it's a different PA, it's all these different variables.
Yep.
And people have to understand that it's not going to be the same every day.
Right. And I dealt with that. The most recent and, I wouldn't say grueling, but harder job I had to deal with as far as management goes. I recently became before I got on with Chris Isaak, was working with Tom Petty's baby band that he was producing called The Shelters, right before he passed away, actually about a year and a half or so before he passed away. And their manager, I basically, I went and I had to go and basically audition at the clubhouse because they were able to rehearse it at Petty's clubhouse and everything. So I went and, small couple speakers on sticks and everything, and just basically mixed there and kind of auditioned. And then I had to come in for an interview, and they, how would you handle this, and do all this kind of stuff. And because I was basically becoming the tour manager, and I ended up doing everything. I was like basically the tour accountant, the tour manager, the front of house, small level production manager, because I did all the advancing for the shows and everything.
Lots of fun, huh?
Oh yeah. There's numerous times you'll do the younger bands, you'll do like 5 or 6 jobs for one pay.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, the mental game there was to work with the manager and everything, and it was great guy, great management and everything. I had no problems, but it's you're working to keep your job.
Yeah,
and I'm working not necessarily for the band at that point because the manager's right there. He wants to know that his quote-unquote kids, are taken care of, his band. So
Sure. So you've remained as an employee of Sound Image, and we met last October, November, when I got hired to come out and mix front of house for Chris Isaak. And at that time, I think that you had just taken over as stage manager, or shortly after I got hired. Then, besides taking care of all the Sound Image gear and helping set up the stage, all the audio stuff, then they decided to make you stage manager, and you like that position. You kind of like having some control.
Yeah, I'm a leader. I was, some people are born with it, some people aren't, and I don't want to sound, cocky or snotty about it, but I'm a leader. I'm not a follower, and I know the things that I know, and if I don't know something, I'll find out and I'll tell you. I'm very humble in that aspect. I'm not going to try to BS my way through stuff if I don't have to or can't.
Well, tell us what does a stage manager actually do on a day-to-day basis out with a band like Chris Isaak Band, 6-piece band?
Well, so stage manager, basically, as it says in the name, it's I manage the stage. So from the moment we walk into the building, I go in, I assess the stage, I look at where power is. Obviously, I'm an audio guy, so I got to, I have, as an audio guy for sound image, my job, my main role as an audio guy is to take care of you and to take care of my monitor engineer, Dave, because you guys are the ones that are using sound image gear. So
right.
For those of you out there that don't know the touring process, I'm in a weird position because when I'm doing the stage manager gig, I'm the boss. Mm-hmm. To a certain degree, I'm one of the bosses. During the day, I kind of retain that, but at the same time, when the show starts and while we're setting up, at any given moment, you or even Dave, my monitor engineer, could want something, and then I become the employee again. So I switch into that role and I help you guys out.
Yeah.
So, but as far as the stage manager, that being said, I come in, I assess where power is, where you're going to set up everything. I make sure you're taken care of out at front of house, that you have what you need, whether it be a stool out to sit on. Where are your
most important thing of the day?
Most important thing,
right? Besides my talkback mic,
right? Which has to be on.
It has to be on. Thank you.
At all times. Even down to, where the snake, to get signal from front of house up to the stage, runs, the stairs that lead down into the crowd so Chris can come down, into the crowd and everything. So anything that deals with that stage, setting up the risers. So when we start load in, I'm the guy that manages all the stage hands, divvies them out to our lighting director. I give some out to front of house to you to help you set up your gear. I give some to Dave, our monitor engineer. I take some to do the stage work. I give some to my guitar guy. I give some to my bass tech.
At the same time, you're supervising the unloading of the truck, too.
Yeah.
It's because all the stuff, we have a 53-foot truck that's full.
Truck, yep.
And that stuff's got to go somewhere. And if it doesn't go to the right places, it can just turn out to be a big mess on stage, right?
Right. Stage manager's not something.
It's like a little puzzle up there.
It is. It's a very big puzzle, and it's not a job that you walk into when you start. I mean, same as
we actually have more square footage of boxes and stuff than would fit on the stage if you just unloaded it all at the same time.
Yes.
So that's why it has to be a thoughtful puzzle that's made. We pull this big case off, take the stuff off, get rid of this case because we don't have room for this case. So you have to make sure that we don't get into a bottleneck, right?
Yes, correct. Where the gear goes on stage is very important at what time, depending on the size of venue.
Right. And then along with that, as a stage manager, then you have to tell the band, hey, we're ready for sound check, then, so that they know.
Yeah, once we are...
You coordinate that with our production manager.
Yep. If you got a good production manager, which I've been lucky enough to have for both guys that have done this job on this crew, once we're done and set up and we've done our line check and we know the stage is ready, then I go and tell him, stage is ready, we're ready for the band to come on when they show up. And then our sound checks are usually at 3:30, and just wait for them, and then they come on and do their thing, and I just basically sit on stage and keep an eye on the artist to make sure that their needs are taken care of and everything. And so the production manager basically, because you should never see a production manager on stage unless there's a major problem, which is why a lot of people think the production managers are always on stage. No, they are the guys that are advancing the tours and taking care of the stuff. So whenever we get to the venue, it makes my job easier because all I got to do is just get the stuff off the truck, make the day flow, and then get it all back on the truck at the end of the night. Right. Because the next gig has already been done and advanced by him.
So we do the sound check, and then we have dinner, and everybody relaxes a little bit. Then we do the show, and then after the show, then it's your job to make sure that everybody gets enough stage hands divvied out and gets the stuff packed up, and then you supervise getting the truck packed again.
Yep.
Actually, I think you have the longest day of everybody.
Typically, yeah. I mean, I'm up when everybody else is because we do breakfast at 9, so we all go in and have a leisure breakfast. But I typically, will leave about a half an hour after I'm done, when 9:30, and then I'll go and start assessing the stage and everything and taking care of that while you finish your tea. And and we're both, Ross and I, we're both tea drinkers, so I'll take my tea to go while you you and the rest of the people, sit and take your time. But actually, me and Dave both, because Dave, One thing that I typically should probably do, my monitor engineer does, but he marks the stage and gets it ready for the risers, where the risers are going to sit. And all that
Yeah, I
kind of
always
stuff,
kind of wondered about that, but I asked him about it, and he said that, well, he'd been doing it for a long time, and he just does it, and he doesn't mind doing it, so and he knows exactly how to do it. So
yeah, and I'm not the guy. I'm going to take over something if somebody's been doing. I'm very loose.
It's working.
So,
if it's not broke, don't
fix it.
Don't fix it. Yeah. So we have a fantastic crew out on this.
Great crew.
We've got typically 9 people, which is a nice big crew for nowadays. A lot of people go with smaller crews now, but it's wonderful when you actually have a person to do each job.
Yes,
I mean you are doing 2 technically, but I think that they fit together pretty well.
They fit very well together. Yes.
Yeah. So so that's great. So now tell me, you're enjoying your role, and we all, I think everybody in this crew and the band, everybody likes doing this. Everybody likes to work, and Chris is working quite a bit, and we're just starting a tour that's going to be, it's going to take us through the rest of the year pretty much. So and of course everybody's happy to be working so that they're making money and they can pay their bills, that's for sure. But it's important to also be happy with what you're doing. And I think you are. And where do you project to be in, say, 5 years from now? So let's say Chris retires in 4 years and he doesn't do this anymore. Where do you want to get to?
Oh, that's a loaded question, because ultimately,
or do you know?
Well, I really don't know. I mean, it's always in the back of my mind. I honestly didn't expect to be with Chris this long. For what we bring in, it's such a small tour. I think I was kind of only meant to be here for like a fill-in, and then they were going to move me on to a bigger tour. But it got to the point where I enjoyed the touring. I enjoyed having his type of touring. Chris's is a very steady, consistent touring once he starts going. And so when he has breaks, his breaks are decent. So it's like you can have a normal life on top of the touring, which is something that's
especially
very hard
this
to
year,
find.
because now we're doing like this 3 week on and a week off, 3 week on, a week off schedule, which is, it has its good and its bad. But I think it's going to work out good, and everybody's going to be happy with that.
Yeah, it's a very good thing. But when I got moved to stage manager, because the production manager was also doing guitar teching as well as he was doing the stage manager position, when he passed that on to me, it kind of gave me a new, refreshing, outlook on it. And it, like you said, it gave me more control and everything. That was the one position that I hadn't done touring yet. As it was a stage manager. So, but the longer I've done it, and at that same time, you came in and some other people came in, and the crew went from what it was and molded into what it is today. And it's a great crew, like you said. And it's just to the point where I like the schedule, the pay's decent, I like the crew. It feels. I'm not a person that likes going overseas. But we went overseas to Europe, where I did Ireland and Scotland, and a bunch of I guess like 7 shows in 5 days, something like that, last year. And when I was over there, I felt like I was with family. And I'll travel when I'm with family. It just felt like a vacation, and we just happened to go do shows in these places, and it was really cool.
Right.
So when I went back to Sound Image, my touring director was like, "So what do you think?" I was like, "I'm going to hang in there. I kind of like my job." So I'm at that point now where I'm going to let these young kids go out on these mega tours and get up at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, and not get into bed until 2, 3 o'clock the next morning. Or I'll just stick with my schedule where I'm.
This is kind of it's not a huge tour, but it's not a little tiny tour.
No,
it's not
it's
like
we
get treated pretty decently. We have a bus for the band, and we have a bus for the crew, and then we have the truck, the 53-foot trailer, and even the bus driver's a fun guy to be around.
Yep.
Bud Lewis, he's a great guy, and it's a pretty nice thing. Yeah, we got a nice thing going here, so I think everybody likes it. But looking towards your life later, I think this business mostly dictates to you how it's going to turn out, and you have to make decisions along the way. So, and sometimes people will have specific goals that they want to do. Do you have those specific goals, or are you kind of just waiting around to see, well, let's see what happens?
No, I do have those specific goals. Ultimately, I have always wanted to mix. I mean, I mixed for the baby bands and everything, but I'm still waiting for that quote-unquote A-list artist, which, I mean, we're working for currently. But I need to get that one A-list artist on my resume mixing front of house so I can start basically, and it sucks to have to say this, but be taken seriously in this industry, especially for a company like Sound Image. So I want to do that. And, at one point, actually, before you came in, my name was in to mix Chris and everything, but the way things kind of happened and everything, it was kind of a quick transition. And, ultimately, when it comes down to things like that, a lot of times it's kind of out of my hands.
Right.
That dealt with management, that dealt with, the artist and everything. And this is one of those industries, like we said before, well, actually, we may not have said this before, but this is an industry that it's all about timing and who you know.
Yeah.
And the band, one of the guys in the band, from what I understand, knew you.
Yeah,
and that's
Scott Plunkett.
Scott Plunkett, our keyboardist. And so that's how you got the job. And I have had no hard feelings towards that. I understand I got to wait, my turn. But it's what I like about it is that, and I have no problem with this, is I've been on tours where I've worked for engineers, as far as a sound guy, where they're nothing but fader pushers. And I end up having to know everything and work with everything. But the great thing about you and Dave is that I can learn from you guys because you guys are legitimate engineers. You've done a lot of studio work. You've been out. I ask you questions. You help me, so you're helping me learn. So it's kind of going back to what it used to be and it should be, rather than me teaching the engineers, which is...
Well, it's a healthy attitude.
It's a...
you're being very... very smart about it. Instead of just being jealous or thinking I should be doing that job, you're taking the opportunity to learn. Because I always tell people, look, when I started out in this business, most of my training was in studio to start. And I always looked up to the engineers that I had to assist for. And that was the time when you get to learn the most because you're working with somebody who's better than you. Not saying I'm better than you, but
I would say you are. You got a little bit more credits to your name.
but just that's your opportunity. That's your one opportunity to learn from somebody else. Because once you step into that number one chair, you're not. There's nobody there above you.
No.
So you're not learning from anybody else anymore. Unless maybe I could learn. Maybe that you could learn something from your assistant if he's. Sometimes they know something that you don't.
Yes.
There's always stuff that you don't know. So I think that's a really good, wise attitude to have.
Thank you.
And to take it like that. And obviously your turn will come. I mean, you'll end up doing that. But I've also heard you talk about that you kind of think that you'd like to do big production management on the bigger tours.
Yeah, I
like what Bobby does. Bobby Herr is our
current
production manager, and he works with Fleetwood Mac and all these big, giant bands, that really out on the big tours.
Yeah, big, and a lot of trucks and everything.
Yeah.
But, that was my ultimate goal, and kind of going on what I was saying, mixing front of house was the stepping stone. I wanted to get there first because I'm a musician, I want to mix. But ultimately, eventually, I would like to work into that position because I'm a multi... what's the word I'm looking for?
Multitasker?
Multitasker, yes, thank you. I was thinking multifaceted, but multitasker, so I can do a lot of different things at the same time, and that's what production management is.
Oh, absolutely,
and
yeah.
I'm a leader, that being said, so it's, putting both of those together, you're leading a crew. I mean, the crew's depending on you when you're a production manager because you're the one that's getting everything ready. So, like I said, you don't care where we're at, what we're doing. You just get off the bus, load in during the day.
As long as my gear's there,
your gear's there, you mix a show. I load in, as long as I've got what I need and fed and all this kind of stuff, we're good. Well, Bobby takes care of all that. So it's like that guy, to be able to step into that, you got to have all your ducks in a row. But I have always wanted to kind of be that type of a person and go into the production manager role. But I will say that I'm really glad that I'm doing the stage management because that was like the last tier. Because I've
great
done,
stepping stone towards that.
I've done tour management for the younger bands, so I know a little bit about how to be a tour manager. I know a little bit about production management and advancing because I've been those on the younger tours. Now in this level, I've been a stage manager. So I've got the gamut of things, and now I'm just, it's great because you're a production manager. But as we were discussing the other day on the bus, you and Bobby both have different levels of production manager experience, and you deal with different things while you production, as Bobby deals with different things as he production manages.
Right.
So there again, it's great for me.
Different types of tours. Yeah.
Different types of tours, different artists, different personalities, all this kind of stuff. But I can learn different things from you on your production style, and I can also learn different things from Bobby. So it's there again. As much as like what I didn't get the mixing position, it's been a blessing to me because I'm working with great people that I can learn from. And just like you said, when you're there at that top tier, you stop learning. And I want to learn. Like I got in this to keep learning, and I'm 3 times, if not 4 times, the engineer now than when I started. And because I've done all this stuff, and I'm constantly picking the brains of those that are above me and older and more experienced in the business, like yourself and everything. So it's been a huge blessing, and I love it.
I think that you would be an excellent production manager. I think that as much as you want to be a front of house mixer, I think and you could do that great too. But I think that production management would suit you quite well, and you'd stay busy all the time.
I would stay busy from what I can tell, but it's just there's still certain things that I still got to pick your brain on and Bobby's to still learn, because even though I've been doing this almost a full 9 years, yes, I'm a professional, but nobody ever knows it all. So,
no, there's always stuff to learn, and like I said, when I said that you kind of stop learning, you don't really actually stop learning, but you have to learn in a different way.
Yeah.
Like sometimes, like yesterday, the guy that was assisting me out at front of house, who ran the PA, who had put the PA up and stuff, he had to mix the opening act on a QL1. Well, he wasn't real familiar with that console, but it has a lot of the same things in it that's in my console. So I was able to show him something that would help him. I said, "Does it have this?" And he said, "No, I don't know." I said, "Well, let's look." And so I showed him a plug-in that was on there that he didn't even know was in there, and it solved the problem that he was having with that guitar player beating on his guitar.
Oh, wow.
So we all, and I love showing people stuff, and I like, a lot of times those guys that are helping me out there, a lot of times they'll know something that I don't know too, and I'm always happy to learn a new trick or a solution to a problem. It's always good. But yeah, I think you're really good with organizing the stage, and you've been very successful as the stage manager. And I think that you have the mentality to do production management too. You don't seem to get rattled, and you just deal with it.
I hide it well.
I think Bobby is amazing. He just seems like he's so together, and I have such respect for somebody who can manage. I've never been a production manager for a tour with what was it, 17 trucks,
18, 19, yeah, something. Yeah,
like some 20 trucks and all that. I mean, I don't even want to go there. That's way beyond my expertise.
Well, the more I hear about it, the more I'm not sure I do anymore either.
Well, no, I think, but you're younger, and I think you can handle that stress and stuff for a while until you learn. I think that you could. I think you'd do it. Good. I don't think that you could go out and do it tomorrow. Yeah. But I think as you're kind of taking your time and you're learning stuff, I think eventually, you could do that. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's what I've done is just the tip of the iceberg. I know there's a lot more to learn and everything. And when I jump, for the shelters, if I were to ever go back out with them, I would be basically doing that same job as mixing and doing tour management. But there's I even learned from Doug, watching him and how he handles the band. So I mean, when I'm on any
Doug
tour,
Casper, our tour manager, he's excellent too.
So whenever I jump back into a tour manager position, or when I jump back into a production manager for a younger band, any position, I watch the larger tours that I'm on. I watch those people in those positions like a hawk to see how they act, how they handle people, how they're doing this. When do you give out per diems? When do you how do you do this? The little sheets that you sign. I mean, so much. I've learned so much. I've been given paperwork, and actually Bobby's going to continue that and give me some paperwork on his stuff. So.
He'll be an excellent source of information for you.
This is one of those industries that, the more I'm in it, the more it becomes a blessing, because the better you treat people and the better attitude you have in it, and I always kind of operate off of, don't be a know-it-all, but want to know it all. So the better attitude you have about it, you can, talk to people like you and Bobby, and it doesn't put a threatening position on their position, like you're trying to come, for them and everything, but they're willing to help you.
Yeah.
That's what you want. If you want to grow in this industry and everything, if you get into this, at the age that I did, and that was late technically, people will help you. I mean, I'll help. I'm always passing down information to the younger guys at Sound Image and everything, and teaching people. So,
well, that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be worried about somebody stealing your job, because,
there are those people out there that are worried about that. And I've met engineers that refuse to show you anything because they're expecting these younger guys to come in and take over. Because there's the transfer between analog gear versus digital gear is when a lot of people lost it.
Yeah. Oh,
you
absolutely.
don't seem to have that problem, which I applaud you.
It took me a while to learn.
But still, you learned
it
it well and took off, and I mean, look at where you're at now. But there's a lot of them that just, I know some that just refuse to go there, and they don't know the consoles, and they rely on their techs so much that technically the techs could, if you've got any mixing chops, you could technically step in and take their job. And so they're afraid. And I've met people like that. So it's like, I don't want to portray that, and I want to come across as nice and as humble as I can, so I can learn from them and assure them that, hey, I'm not here to take your job. I just want to learn, so when I get the opportunity, I can be you.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's there's definitely a difference between guys that are good mixers and guys that are good technicians.
Mm-hmm.
A great you could know everything about a console and every piece of gear out there, but it doesn't necessarily make you a good mixer.
No.
You still have to have the taste and the
mixing is an art.
The instincts to make it sound good, mm-hmm. and make everybody happy. Not just yourself. You're trying to make the entire audience and the artist happy, so that you're
mm-hmm.
getting compliments at the end of the night, and when your artist has meet and greets after the show, that he's hearing good reports from everybody about the sound. So, and that they do find out.
Oh yeah,
they do find out after a while. They either hear, "Hey, the show sounded great," or "The show sounded horrible." So
that was
if
one.
You're on that end of it, you're probably not going to last very long.
Right. And that was always one of the things, like with my younger bands, when I'd be backstage, in the dressing room with them, finishing up the night, if I had that one person, and I walked in numerous times when people were talking and everybody was like, oh, you guys sounded amazing. Now, I'm not going to say, oh, thank you, just they necessarily weren't talking to me, they were talking to the band.
Yeah, right.
But inadvertently, that's a pat on my back, and that makes me look good because the band is being told that. So if I can get that, or if I can get somebody coming up, then after the concert's over, and even just a patron, then I've done my job.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So
cool. So we're just kind of starting this tour, so we got like a lot of time to go, and I'm going to ask some of the other people that are involved in this to do these interviews too. So I think it's going to be kind of fun on our days off to get together and do this stuff. You've been great, and we've become friends, and it's lots of fun. So
awesome.
This business is fun. It's not for everybody, though, is it? It's not easy to be gone. Some people, for some people, it's easy. For me and my wife, we're good with it. But I know a lot of guys end up getting divorced in this business from not not everybody being on the same page as far as what this kind of work entails.
Yep. I grew up on the road traveling with my family for vacations, so it was no stretch for me to, step on the road and do this and actually get paid for it. And my parents they're a little bitter every once in a while. I was like, my dad was saying to my mom one day, and he's like, you know what, Karen, our son's got it figured out. He learned how to travel and get paid for it.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what happens. I get to travel on somebody else's dime.
And we're in this beautiful hotel today.
It's immaculate.
Actually, it's not bad, but it's not. But every now and then you do get to stay at a Four Seasons or a Ritz or something, Yeah. And then those other days that it's not so fancy, but it's a lot of fun. We have a good time.
We're still very well taken care of.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're pretty lucky. But it's not all luck. It's a lot of hard work.
It's a lot of hard work.
Yeah, you got to be good. Mm-hmm. So, do you have any other things that you want to say, or should we end this?
I would say. Kind of a little plug here, if you don't mind.
No, go right ahead.
I'm in the process. I actually did a grad panel recently at the school, the conservatory, And
the full name of the school again?
Conservatory of Recording Arts and Sciences.
In
Tempe and Gilbert, Arizona.
Okay.
And I was, there telling them, and I told them the same thing. It's like, just keep in mind, because there's a lot of people that want to go on tour, aren't meant for it, and you'll find out quick. I mean, it's a tough life. Even as good as we have it on this tour, traveling and doing what we do is still a tough life.
Yeah,
But,
well, actually, this is kind of nice traveling because we have the bus, but a lot
Yeah.
of tours that I've been on is all flying. And
That's
that
a
is
whole nother
not
animal.
fun.
No.
No, it's hard.
But my point is that when I was down, actually, because I toured with Jimmy Buffett, and when I accidentally broke my foot at a local gig when I was out on tour with him, and during a break. And in that 4-month period, I started my website, and my website is basically all of the things that I did at the school to, kind of like an online portfolio, but then it also has morphed into, it's got my bio, but it's morphed into, like, I have a blog, and I have a touring page. It also has my, tour dates and everything, but the news page and the blog, we'll start with the news page. The news page is everything that, keeps up to date with what we're doing and everything, so if people want to know what I or touring people do on a day-to-day basis, you can look on the news page. The blog I have is because I'm so passionate about music. The blog is called How Music Affects Life. So it's everything about, stupid little things like how music affects people with Tourette's syndrome. I mean, that's just one little title, but different things about how music affects life, and I do little blog snippets. But my blog basically tells how I got into this industry in my bio. If you're listening to this, you got a good chunk of it, but if you want it more direct and read it took me probably a good month and a half to write my bio to make sure I had everything in in chronological order. So this one was kind of a little leap around, but you can check out the website and kind of see more about the touring lifestyle and everything.
And what is the website?
www.tailored, Taylored, touring, touring.com.
Mm-hmm. And from there, they can find all these bits and pieces.
From there, it's just follow the website. It tells everything. It's got all your links up at top, for all the different pages and everything. But I put a lot of work into it, and I'm hoping for more people to follow it. And I'm working with you actually. This if I can put you on there. I'm actually, trying to, I've got like a video, I did a video interview for the Crass grad panel that's going to go on there that's, shows that, and I'm hoping to put this on there and everything, so you can kind of get different levels of, the grad panel video was more about how the school impacted me, so that kind of plays in, and then now, this interview and everything. So here recently, it's been a slew of interviews, which is great, because this is
getting your name out there.
Getting my name out there, and I'm hoping to get your name out there, with the podcast, because for anybody that's listening, if you aren't or haven't listened to this podcast, yes, I'm on this now, and it's great because I love this podcast.
Yeah,
Ross has done a fantastic job.
You've been an advocate, and you've been. Before we even asked you to do this, you've been listening to almost all the episodes of my podcast, and I really appreciate that.
This podcast has done wonders for me because it's you hear other people and from different directions, musicians, engineers, you name it, coming in and how they got started, and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one that started at the bottom. Because you look at some of these people and be like, you always walk by the front of house engineer and be like, oh yeah, he's been doing it for years and he got started. And there are some people, like I know a guy that came out of the conservatory that immediately started mixing for like Evanescence. Mm-hmm. Sheer luck.
Yeah, that doesn't happen very often.
Few and far between.
Yeah.
And I did go out and start mixing front of house my first tour, but it was for a baby band. It wasn't for an established band like Evanescence at that point.
Yeah.
But I love this podcast because it's, it gives you that background of everybody else and what they've been through, and I listen to it on my way back and forth to work from my 9-to-5 job when I'm at Sound Image. So
right. Yeah, because when you're off tour, then you do work at the shop and help out there.
Yep,
right?
9 to 5.
Busy.
And now it's kind of ironic too because I've started filling in for our shop manager. So as a stage manager now, it's really being able to hone in my skills of management and multitasking to where I manage a warehouse and fill in for him and tell people. There it is again. Tell people what to do and control them to where it's let's load this truck. Let's keep the operations moving so we can keep the company moving.
Yeah, I'd say one of the big takeaways from this podcast and lots of them that I've done is that what you think you're going to do in this business doesn't always. You set out in this direction to the left, and sometimes there's some roads that go to the right, and so there's paths that you end up. And I would recommend to people is to don't fight it, to just go with it and see what happens. Because if I never really planned for things to go exactly the way they went in my life and my career, but I kind of went with what happened at the time, and I think it works out better that way.
It does.
Got to be open-minded to maybe doing. You went to school to be an engineer, but now you're the stage manager, and you're doing these different things, but they're all in the music business, and they're all about touring, and so it's all good. All that knowledge is great. You can never have too much knowledge.
No.
Yeah.
I had no intentions of being a stage manager. I had no intentions of staying with Chris this long because depending on the crew and the band itself, sometimes you just move on. You get kind of bored, whatnot. And that's not to say that Chris is boring in any way, because he's not. It's on a fantastic show.
Yeah.
But I never intended on being where I'm at still today, and I'm now. I think this June made 2 years that I've been with Chris, and now a full year ish that I've been stage manager. So don't fight it. I would agree with you.
Yeah,
take it for what it is, because it's been a blessing to me and a growth pattern, and I've met great people, and like I said, if the
more skills you have, the more opportunities you have to stay employed.
Exactly,
and that's one of the big problems of this business, being an independent contractor. I mean, with you, because you're with Sound Image, you always are employed with them, but
they play my business manager basically.
Yeah, but as an independent like me, it's like just try to stay busy all the time,
right. Well, that's why I started my website.
Yeah.
It was for that exact reason. As if I do independent work, that way people know where I've been, what I've done, what I can do.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, then I think it's about time for dinner. So we'll.
It's about that time.
Yeah. So we're gonna say goodbye. We're signing off with Scott Taylor from Chris Isaak's tour and Sound Image. And it's been a real pleasure, meeting with you today.
I appreciate it.
All right. Take care, Scott.
You too.
We are currently looking for sponsors for the Rossaround Backstage podcasts so that we can continue to bring you interesting stories like the one that you just heard. I can be reached through Facebook or email me at rosspallone@me.com. Thank you for listening.